Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Finance Operations and Personnel Committee meeting of March 18th for the Portland, Maine Board of Education. My name is Sarah Bryden. I am the committee chair. It is 2:03 p.m. and we are getting started, so I'm calling the meeting to order. I want to give an overview of what we're hoping to accomplish today in this meeting. And after I give that overview, I'm going to check and see if there are any attendees that have a Zoom hand raised to give public comment. If there are, I will go over the rules around public comment, and we will do that before we start the rest of our conversation. So we are having this meeting at 2:00 in the afternoon, in part to allow different sections of the community to participate. The dinner hour can be tough for some people, so we're making an attempt to sort of diversify meeting times. That being said, 90 minutes in the middle of a workday for many people, a lot. I know some of us have other things that we need to do at 3:30, so we are going to, for this particular meeting, we're going to hold to the 90-minute meeting time. I also want to this is not a new thing for most of us, but remind folks of where we are situated in terms of the cadence of meetings and where we are in the process. So if we don't get to your question tonight, or if we don't get to spend enough time on your question today, reminders for committee and board members that we're having a workshop on the budget tomorrow after the full business meeting in a workshop. And then also we're having a committee meeting on Thursday, March 28th. Just to back up one moment, the workshop after the full business meeting tomorrow on the 19th, that's discussion. On Thursday, March 28th, we're having a joint meeting with the City Council Finance Committee. And then after that, we're having just our committee is having a follow-up meeting on that, which would be an opportunity to discuss and potentially amend the budget proposal. And then Monday, April 1st, we are having a committee meeting. And in that context, we will be able to discuss, amend, and vote on the budget. So, so this is obviously a very important 90 minutes, but it is not the only 90 minutes within which we can do our work. Just wanted to sort of lay that out there. So for this 90 minutes, my goals are to continue what we were doing last meeting and set ourselves up for future meetings, continue to get detailed context and information from staff so that as committee and board members, we can effectively do the work of making the decisions that we need to make moving forward. So I don't want us to I want us to try and not get bogged down in things like where we're going to land on the tax rate, or how to do trade-offs and things like that, but more like, I have this assumption or I have a question about whether this is feasible, and to have a conversation with the staff that we have here with us today. Thank you. Around some of the details around, whether our assumptions are correct, and, what other information we might need to, again, be able to make those decisions that we will need to make in order to vote on April 1st. So with that, I am going to check and see whether there are any attendees that have a Zoom hand raised. I'm seeing none. So just, I will very, very explicitly say, opening for public comment. Seeing if there is a hand raised. I see you, Julie. Hold on just 1 minute. Okay, I'm seeing no attendees' hands up. Julie, are you looking to say something about public comment?
No.
Okay, all right.
I just want to make sure I get my hand up.
Okay.
I'm excited. I'm excited
Thank
to be
you. You are on the ball. Okay, so I'm going to close public comment. And, okay. All right, so I'm going to close public comment. And so in about maybe 30 seconds, I'll be turning this over to Superintendent Scallon to sort of walk us through some of the information that staff has compiled for us in advance of this meeting, based on questions that have already come up. But Julie, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I guess my questions have to do with, and I need some verification if I'm thinking about certain things like population and student population and budget increases and possibilities of what certain changes might entail within the system. I'll be straight up front. I do not want the budget to go any higher than it is. I do want the budget to go down a bit, and I'll explain that in a minute. But there are a couple things, and one of the things I was thinking about is there's 5 drivers, van drivers. I'd love to have one of them eliminated if that's possible. And at the high schools, I was looking at the investments in culture coordinators, which is good. And also we have 2 assistant principals, which is 4 people. And I wonder if there might be some redundancy. I ask that because in my experience, well, for many years, that much of the culture type things have been the responsibility of vice principals, and there are 2. I'm not saying, I wonder what the impact would be in responsibilities if there would be 3 of the 4 that have been presented. I'm not saying who, what, where, but that 3 as opposed to 4, because I think it just doesn't, it makes sense to me. And that's one of my questions. Also at the high school, there are a number of, there are 5 school counselors, which is a lot for the size of those schools, a real lot compared to what I know elsewhere. And then there's also one Make It Happen counselor. I'm not saying to eliminate a Make It Happen counselor. I think they have an incredibly important counseling role, from exactly what Rohan was talking about a minute ago about comfort and safety. But one individual counselor for every 150 students is pretty high. And I wonder if somehow the counselors could be decreased by 1, and the Make It Happen individual is incorporated and belonging to the counseling organization. Largely because, from my understanding, talking to kids and all the people, that some of what happens in Make It Happen is that guidance in areas such as direction of life, as classes to take, as well as the encouraging and supporting, which all counselors should be doing anyway. So I'm just wondering if that's a possibility.
Yeah, Julie, I'm going to pause you just for a second. I think that so some of the themes of your concerns are really clear. Ryan, can we expect to hear some of the information that might be relevant around some of these things as we work through the content that you've already prepared, like transportation and high school administrators and Make It Happen? Is that part of the plan for today's information sharing?
So today would include conversation around Make It Happen. We're very fortunate to have both our middle school and our high school Make It Happen directors here. And so that part would be covered. I don't know that it'll directly speak to the school counselors. And then the culture coordinator, yes, we can talk a little bit about that. That is covered. And the van driver, if it is of your approval, and Chair Lentz, we would plan to have transportation be one of the topics during the workshop tomorrow, just to talk through where there are additions and thoughts around contracted services. So we could talk about that tomorrow, if that would be all right.
Thank you.
Super. And so I think what we're going to do, I appreciate that, Ryan and Julie. So I think where we should go next is, Ryan, I'll turn the meeting over to you, and you can, you and all of the amazing staff people that have joined us can share the information that you've prepared, and then we can see, what remaining questions we have that we can get through during our time today. Thank you.
Great. And just a big thank you to everybody on staff that's prepared this. Just for ease, I'm just going to fly through a couple of the things, and then we're going to turn it over to Dr. Valenzuela and her team to talk about Make It Happen. and the work, because there were some questions that came up about that. Again, it's going to be a short agenda, but I want to share a quick update on some revised thinking around instructional coaches and interventionists. Following up on the meeting from last week, share a little bit around Maine care reimbursement. There was also a question around Title I funding and staffing, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Then I'm going to pass it over for Make It Happen. And then there are some topics that have come up that are not reflected in this year's budget, but are areas that we're starting to keep a list of for future exploration. It's not meant to be exhaustive, but just wanted to share that and let board members and committee members know that we're holding on to those pieces as we go forward. Just to set the stage again, remember, there were 5 guiding principles that put together this budget. So making sure that it aligned to the strategic plan and where it's grounded in equity, make sure that the budget cuts had as small an impact on students. Every cut we make will have some impact on students because we're talking about people that do great work with our kids, but we wanted to make it as far from students as possible. We wanted to identify opportunities for strategic investment. We reviewed all expenses, not just COVID-funded expenses. And then we want to make progress in this idea of building a sustainable organization so that year after year, we're able to continue to build on our momentum and not feel like we have to stop and start because of budget challenges or the need to change organizational structure. This is within the context, right? You've seen this before, but just in the context of our overall budget this year is $163 million. Next year, the proposed is $161 million, with the biggest drop caused by the loss of COVID funds. And here again, just shows you the overall sort of like big ticket items that we talked about in the March 5th budget on the challenges that we face. And so you can see both decreasing revenues and increasing expenses. And so within this context, there were a lot of really difficult budget decisions to be made. And as we saw in the conversation on the 5th, and then again on the 11th, there's no budget decision that was made that didn't come with some loss, right? Whether it's a relationship that a student has with a staff member or work that a staff member does to support students. But we tried to, again, minimize that, but that was the hard reality that we faced here. And so I don't present to you that budget thinking that it was either perfect or that there weren't hard decisions within it and loss captured in it. One of the areas that was wrestled with was around this question of many of our schools, our elementary schools in particular, having between 0 and 3 instructional coaches. And so you had some of our schools, particularly our island schools, where they had 0 coaches, and then a school like Talbot, where there were 3 instructional coaches. And the proposal was made to go down to 1 instructional coach and to have 1 to 2 content-specific interventionists that would ensure that our students are getting consistent access to grade level or research-based interventions. And this proposal didn't happen in isolation. It happened based on staff feedback, community feedback, a review of our data, the strategic plan and its particular focus on reading over the next 2 years, implementation science and the research that tells us that schools can only take on so many initiatives at one time if we expect to see traction. And we have to think about it not from the lens of the central office's ability to support, but teachers actually able to absorb and do it, and then our budget realities. And so originally, when the model was presented around 1 instructional coach and 2 interventionists, I think we may have overcorrected. I may have overcorrected a little bit in terms of having it all particularly focused on literacy. And so based on feedback, we do have some slight revisions that we're proposing, and just wanted to share that as an area of continued discussion, including with our principals earlier today. And so first, I just want to orient you to the strategic plan. And so as we think about any type of staffing, we need to make sure that it's aligned to the research on change management and our strategic plan. And so this, what you see here, is one of the initiatives within our strategic plan. And it shows that in K-5, academic initiatives are staggered to ensure prioritization and capacity at the school and teacher level. And during the design or launch phase, the district would invest in resources to effectively implement that change. You see that in terms of how we leverage the fund balance and how we're thinking about the instructional coach next year being particularly focused around literacy. This is done, again, to make sure that schools aren't taking on too much at one time, but also to make sure it's economically feasible and sustainable. And then where you see like a white box, right? It doesn't mean that work is not happening. In fact, it means work continues, even when it's not prioritized. And so teachers will continue to implement illustrative math, and network and school leaders will support that implementation. And in the revised draft that we're talking about today, content specialists or that interventionist will be able to support some of the planning and professional development that would happen. And so it's within this strategic plan that we're thinking about the coach and the interventionist model. And so I just put this up here. There's too much content on this slide. So it's a save for later and read through, but I just want to highlight a couple of pieces. The first is that the positions you see on the left there, principal, assistant principal, and on, they're designed to align with members of the network team so that we make sure there's a straight line that's focused on student outcomes from the assistant superintendent to the principal, to outcomes from the director of academics to the assistant principal and instructional coach and on. And so here, what I just want to highlight is that the instructional coach would be primarily teacher facing in sort of a typical school. And there's no perfect typical school. This will adjust based on local context, but around 80 to 100% of time, teacher focused and really focused on that priority of making sure that we continue to see progress in the implementation and the outcomes from our EL and CKLA curriculum. The content specialists, interventionists are the opposite. They're 80 to 100% student facing. And so they're really designed to make sure that students are getting those research-based interventions. One of the adjustments based on feedback was to keep that 20% available so that that content specialist or that interventionist would have time to join a grade team and look at student work with them, help plan the next week of lessons, support professional development. And in schools with two content interventionists, it's all likely that one would focus on math and one would focus on reading. And so it would allow us to keep that capacity and that math training and work that's been happening there. It would just shift the focus. I think right now they're around 40% student facing, and this would just shift that to about 80%. As I said, there's no two schools though that are exactly the same. And so one of the conversations that's come up both in this committee and with our principals is, could you adjust? And could you choose to have your school culture coordinator focus on something else? And what the answer I shared with principals today is that it's possible that you would adjust, and you would adjust based on your team at your school. But what we're going to still ask for is that you tell us who's the point person in your school for CKLA, so that the network director of academics knows who they're partnering with on that implementation. Who is your lead for PBIS and restorative justice, so that our network director of climate knows who they're liaisoning with. And so it's really to create that clarity so that we're all rowing in the same direction and all truly focused on outcomes on this. And so, well, this is a typical model that you see here. Just to give an example, this is a school that I had a conversation with earlier today. And what they shared with me is that their assistant principal is really dynamic at school climate. Maybe this is the school Dr. Opperman was talking about, right? Where an AP is really focused on climate. And so in this case, they would have their assistant principal continue to remain focused on climate. They would have their instructional coach continue to work on the EL and CKLA implementation. And then they would adjust their school culture coordinator to take on some of the additional support for teachers, perhaps some of the math work or new teachers or mentoring or other pieces that are needed at the school level. And so I show this here just to highlight that there's no perfect one model, but that part of the reason we did the budget the way we did in the proposal was that we could know who the point person was, even if they needed to adjust a little bit who was sitting in the seat. And so that's what's going on with this. So you do see, and I appreciate the feedback so far, the shift a little bit so that we're maintaining the math piece with a specific focus on the support of students. As we move forward, we know that we need to continue to think about how do we explore additional revenues in a fiscally conservative manner. And so there's been conversation around Maine Cares and whether there is an ability for the district to capture more revenue from Maine Cares. What you see on the left is a table that shows you what was budgeted each of the last 7 years in the approved budget, and then what was received. And so you can see that in fiscal year 17 and 18, each year it was budgeted around $500,000, and one year they got a little less than that, and the next year they got a little more. And then it built up to FY20, which I think is when one of the BREATHE programs came on, and there was a belief around the ability to capture perhaps more Maine Cares revenue. And so it was budgeted at 1.6. And the numbers indicate from the budget books, that's where I sort of pulled this, it was the easiest way to pull it, about $428,000 was retrieved. And so there's been a pretty significant gap between what was budgeted and what was actually received. And I assume that's why it came back down in FY23 to $300,000. This is an area where the state is reviewing and potentially adjusting the requirements to make it easier for schools such as ours to be able to capture some of this revenue. I don't believe that those rules have been fully adjusted or shared yet. I think they're still in the development phase. Two of the specific challenges that I heard from members of our student support team when I asked them about this area was that, one, there was significant paperwork requirements that came with this, and our union contracts were not always aligned to those requirements and the ability to have time for staff to not only provide direct to student services, but then to also bill for it. And so this is a challenge. This is an area where we plan to really dig into this and to see what revenue we are able to capture as a future piece. I just provide a little bit of caution, right? So I have some happy optimism about the ability to get additional revenue and cautious not knowing exactly what the right dollar amount is.
Chair, can I just jump in for 1 second to make a clarification? So you're muted, but I'm going to take that as a quick yes. So just on this chart, we created the BREATHE program in FY20, and that's why you see the jump in the budgeted amount. And that amount is for, I don't know what the FY23 number is. That's a different number, but not the full BREATHE program. So and then in FY20, when we created the BREATHE program, we budgeted that about $900,000 was going to come from the state. And in fact, we received a little bit less than half of that. So the column that's not included in here is the columns are what we were budgeting to come from our local budget and what we are expecting to come from the state through reimbursements. And it is the case that we were expecting more and were not able to recoup all of the cost. But I just did want to make that clarification. It wasn't like we were expecting off the full $1.7 million from the state. We were budgeting for part of that, the funding to come from our local budget in each of these years.
So that's different than my understanding. Board Member Figdor, looking at the approved FY20 budget book, it looks like that's all in revenue. Maybe that's me reading it wrong, but that's what it looked like. So I can go back and check on that, but I believe that was budgeted revenue.
I'll put the link to the budget book, the FY20 budget book on in the chat, and it's on page 27.
Great.
Ryan, super quick process question for today. Would you like to take questions by topic, or do you want us to hold questions until the end of your slides?
I think we should wait. It'll just be easier.
Okay.
2 more slides.
Okay.
And then I'm going to pass it over to Make It Happen. So,
Yep.
so this year, one of the exciting parts is that we're able to do and talk about title funding in IDEA. And so there was a question. Oh, sorry, I didn't change the title. There was a question about use of Title I funding. So I just wanted to share. As a district, there are 4 different titles that we receive funding. We assumed a 3.2% increase from FY24 to FY25. We won't actually know what the funding is for a little bit. And so we tried to split the difference, knowing there'd be some carryover money that was not spent this year, and the fact that it's been a little bit variable, what's gone up or down each year. And so Title I funding is used to support low-income students. Title II is used to support teacher and leader professional development. Title III is used to support English language learners and immigrant students. Title IV is used to support STEM and well-rounded academics. And IDEA supports students with IEPs. Typically, sorry, I just went back a slide. Typically, positioning and resources for this would happen after the budget process. But again, we're doing estimated for now to be able to get going and have this be part of the planning process and to have you as part of the conversation. What you can see here, and again, I will leave it for future exploration, but what it shows you on the far left is the school. And the FTE equivalent in Title I funding from FY24 to FY25. There's a difference in school funding based on the percent of students that qualify as low income. And so what happens here is that the schools get sort of like ranked or listed in order of highest low income to lowest. And the amount of funding you spend on the school needs to be aligned to that. So your most economically disadvantaged school receives more funding than your second most. And so what you can see here is that from left to right, there's not a huge change in staffing. It's pretty consistent. There's a little bit of change in terms of the use of education technicians, but the overall FTE is like pretty similar. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Grace and her team to talk a little bit about Make It Happen. Did we lose?
Grace, I'm not hearing you. It's.
Oh my goodness, I have to start all over. I'm sorry, I'm muted. Thank you for saying something. Good afternoon to all. Thank you for the opportunity to provide more information about the Make It Happen program at the district level. And with me today are Rohan Henry, our full-time director at the high school level, and Naila Wisa, our half-time director at the middle school level. I will give the program overview, and Ms. Wisa and Mr. Henry will help answer your questions and provide a more illustrative representation of the program. Just a background, in 2007, this is for folks, particularly those who are listening who may not know anything about the program, and for new school board members. In 2007, the Multilingual and Multicultural Center launched a grant-funded pilot of the Make It Happen program to address the specific needs and barriers of immigrant and refugee students. These students, identified by multilingual students in a focus group conducted before the conception of the program, take into account the real barriers underserved multilingual learners typically come up against, such as lack of access to rigorous classes, courses, low expectations from school staff, limited social capital, unfamiliarity with the U.S. educational system, challenges in developing competitive college profile, internalized racism, etc. Make It Happen designed a more seamless program across the board that considers the academic, social, and emotional development of students and incorporate systems of support to bring about educational justice. The program ran for 10 years on Title III, private foundation grant awards, and the multilingual signature fundraiser Rock Around the World, which is, by the way, coming back this April. Being on soft money, we relied on AmeriCorps members to run the school sites. With challenges in funding and finding consistent staffing, the middle school program was eventually eliminated. In 2017, the district started to slowly provide funding for the high school director and the site coordinators in the local budget. One Make It Happen position was recommended each year in the local budget, and the process took a few years to materialize. In fact, Casco Bay High School's coordinator became full-time only 3 years ago. On your screen are the mission and vision. Could we move forward the slide, please? On your screen are the mission and vision statements for the program. It really was designed as an equity educational justice strategy, and we do this by addressing providing personalized and structured supports and opportunities to create competitive profiles for college and career, engage our students in civic and leadership activities, advance their sense of self, identity, and agency, and expand their social and community network and experiences. So the next two slides will show that what the programming looks like at each level. So can we move forward for the high school one? Yeah. At the high school level, the program's personalized and structured support includes academic coaching, college prep courses, standard test preparation classes, college visits, instruction and support in crafting college essays, outreach to families and parents in their home language, civic engagement, and leadership development. We encourage students to take challenging classes, improve their standardized test scores, and engage in leadership activities, community service, and career readiness opportunities to help students be competitive. We know that colleges hardly ever just review GPA and test scores, and they want to see that students are engaging in their community. However, finding opportunities for civic engagement and other routes to building a solid profile almost requires not just English mastery, but most importantly, social capital. A family that has been living in a city for generations typically has the network or resources to network that make getting internships, job experience, and volunteer opportunities accessible for students. This community network, which most multilingual immigrants do not have access to as newcomers to a new country, is a barrier that we work to overcome. We also have to explain this important work to families who have limited understanding of the requisitions for building a high school student's resume that is competitive. We work alongside with our family and community outreach specialists to do these critical conversations with families. By partnering with youth-serving organizations, the program provides networking infrastructure for students who would not otherwise have access to those connections and opportunities. We connect students to real-world and work experiences that expand their perspectives and preparation. So far, for this year, we have 234 students in the high school program, representing 36% of the multilingual student body. We have volunteer academic coaches who put in 134 hours a week. And according to independent sector analysis, Maine's volunteer hours in 2022 accounts for $28.89 an hour, which would translate to $3,871 per week, and for the year would be $154,580. We also partner with 25 different community organizations and institutions of higher education to provide programming. At the middle level, recognizing the importance of the middle school program and the social emotional challenges brought on by COVID years, particularly among middle school students, the school board voted to bring back the program using ESSER funding. The middle school program focuses on high school academic preparation and transition, as well as developing the students' self and identity and agency. At the middle school, Make It Happen offers academic tutoring provided by community volunteers and college and high school mentors. We also provide after-school homework help and enrichment activities and extended learning opportunities in order to inspire a sense of belonging and community and build leadership skills for the students. These opportunities also help broaden students' awareness and experiences of the world of work, civics, the arts, recreation, and wellness. The homework help is staffed by community volunteers who come with resources, connections, and insights that are beneficial to our students. We have a strong partnership with USM and are proud of our high school mentors to support Make It Happen effectively, giving the middle schoolers a chance to ask questions about high school and form a bond with the older students while giving the high school students volunteer experiences and hours. So far this year, we have 168 students in the program, representing 30% of the multilingual middle school population. We have volunteer tutors who put in a total of 105 hours a week at $28.89 an hour. This would translate to 3,033 per week, and for the year, 121,338. We have 15 different community organizations who have partnered with us at this grade level. Over the last 17 years, Make It Happen has been helping talented and devoted students achieve their goals by providing them an equitable pathway to compete with their peers. Patterns and trends from our high schools have provided overwhelming evidence that showed how, with added support and structure, students who participate in the program are better equipped to successfully graduate high schools and be accepted in post-secondary institutions. On a personal level, the students overwhelmingly feel secure, confident, and prepared to deal with college and subsequently their professional careers. Moving forward, this is my last slide, Ryan. Moving forward, we have identified strategies for extending our services and sharing our success to be accessed by more students. These are activities that I want to make sure you understand that we already do, but we plan on expanding student outreach and engagement. So we can increase the number of students that we serve in the middle and high school program, host college and career fairs district-wide, extend workshop offerings to a larger school community. That would be our SAT prep, for example, expand the 8th grade to high school transition support, and expand our community partnerships to access out-of-school youth enrichment programming. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Grace. And we'll have time for questions. Just 2 slides here. So there's been areas that, as we've talked about, this year's budget that have come up that have areas, what I describe as areas of exploration for future discussion, because it impacts both programming at a pretty significant level as well as budget. There may be folks that are interested in putting these on earlier docket, but we're considering these as like future conversations. One is around all components of middle school transportation. So we have done and shared with you some work around the middle school model for transportation in particular, and whether or not middle school students could go on to Metro. Based on community feedback, that feels like a topic that is longer discussion to engage feedback. I know central office sale and relocation is a topic that's come up several times, but with our smaller footprint at the central office, it may be worth re-exploring. Similar to other questions around catchments, is a question that's come up around enrollment patterns, and particularly on how it impacts the middle school model, as our budget is built on a middle school model of teams of 100. and our schools have a little bit less than around 450 kids. And so it makes it hard to do teams of 100. And so there's a question there. I don't think these are areas that intending to necessarily wrestle to the ground today, but just wanted to share as folks have asked about what has come up that we are thinking about for future exploration. And then last, I'm just going to remind everybody of the calendar. So we're at the 18th. We have our budget workshop following our regular board meeting tomorrow. And so we have an opportunity for public comment again then. And as Chair Bryden talked about, other dates going on beyond that. And so I won't sort of digress into that, but you can see them up there, many of them with the opportunity for public comment. And so I encourage folks, as you heard on the coaching interventionist piece, we're continuing to take your feedback and to adjust. And so I would just encourage you to continue to have your voice be heard and to participate in this process.
And so Superintendent Scallon said March 19th should have an asterisk. It doesn't.
Yes, it should.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure to make that super clear.
Thank you. Thank you for catching that.
No, yeah. Wonderful. Are you ready to take questions?
Yes.
Wonderful. Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
Thank you. And I'm actually revisiting the one I brought up because I'd like to hear what you all think. I visited last year. Grace set it up so that I could go visit at Lincoln and talk to the kids and some of the high school kids who were involved in Make It Happen. It's marvelous. It should be for everybody. I mean, it's just that the whole idea of it, the support of it for students, particularly in middle school. High school has supposedly some structures that are supposed to do that, but certainly in middle school, that kind of interaction is critically important. So I guess, and Rowan, maybe it's asking you, what I was bringing up about being able to involve more multilingual students by being more integrated somehow into the general counseling setup. I don't know how that works, but am I clear or am I being?
Yes, Ms. Opperman. So, and Rowan can answer the question. I just want to say that we work well and partner very well closely with our guidance counselor teams. And in fact, during high school, the classroom that we use is next to the guidance office for that purpose. And Rohan, you might want to expand some more.
Yeah, I hope this helps a little bit, but the guidance counselors are doing exceptional work, and they are trying to meet the needs of our students, the multilingual students. But in my observation, the structure that they operate in is one of everyone that walks into the door is part of an inclusionary model. And I would say yes to some extent, but if you really take time to observe and to talk to each student, to talk to them, listen to their stories, you'll understand that the way the system operates, and that assumption that everyone walks into that guidance counselor's office on the same playing field is in a lot of ways, when I talk to students and listen to their stories and their families, it isn't true. And so what I mean to get down granular, there's I think 20 or 30 minutes for a senior meeting. And so when a student walks into that meeting, a student like mine, my kids were born in the United States, they can take advantage of that 20, 30 minutes that they're meeting with the guidance counselor, because there's not a cultural language, there's not barriers that are there. And so they can just get right down to it, boom, 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 and then leave. The students that I serve, when they leave that meeting, the guidance counselors are doing everything that they can to try to meet the needs. But Make It Happen is a place where we are adept at meeting those needs. We are specialists at understanding a lot of the cultural norms and things that each student brings. And so I don't know if that helps a little bit, but
I think it does, and I don't disagree. I completely understand. I mean, I taught high school for 40 years. I know the routine in middle. Get in there. Just noting how few students that the guidance counselors actually have, compared to and that's of the. I mean, that would even technically include students who are in Make It Happen. So I'm not saying to not have Make It Happen working as it's working, but I would really like to see a move of the Make It Happen moving into that 20 minutes, if you understand what I mean. And Dr. Ahmed.
20 minutes with each student?
Yeah, I mean, they can't, 20 minutes of students is ridiculous anyway. But I was saying, yes, so that it's not something I can picture. I can tell you what to do, but philosophically, I would really like to see the Make It Happen philosophy, technique, whatever you want to call, the various aspects of skills that you use, to work its way into the guidance department. And I say, whether it's making these appointments 40 minutes long and you're sitting there with them and that guidance counselor. So, otherwise we're isolating people. That really bothers me, because it's they're all going out into the world together and they're about things. Whoops. Got my time up, Sarah?
It's not, but this is a good pause for
time for me to break. I understand.
Well, no, Dr. Ahmed, it looked like you had something to contribute.
Yes, and our guidance counselors, all the high schools serve each and every student. But given the outcomes and for our marginalized students in all over our schools, there must be some specific interventions and investments that we can do something about that and Make It Happen. Is proven to be that, and so it's not either or. It is really something else to build on. And this is, unless we look into into our data and say like this is subgroup needs specific interventions and build on that, and that's what is Make It Happen does actually.
Well, I think I'm not arguing that, and I'm not arguing we should cut out Make It Happen at all. I'm just saying that I see every kid in the building having a Make It Happen experience in some way, shape, or form. But, it's a pie in the sky kind of thing. That's the way I am, very optimistic. But I will say that. And so when I asked the question at the beginning, is saying, you got 5. I was doing the number thing. That's this particular committee. The 5 guidance counselors and only 1, Make It Happen person who's dealing with X number of kids in that school, and looking at 150 kids per guidance counselor. And even if you cut down 1 guidance counselor, you would still be under 200, which is, the right number in some way, shape, and form. So I'm trying to, in doing this, maximize the effect of Make It Happen and and then yet find something to have money in addition for other things, perhaps in the future. And I'll be quite frank, is teachers don't make enough money. So guidance counselors don't make enough money. Sorry, guys, everybody else, but that's a fact. And in the back of my mind, when all my discussion of saying we got to keep trimming, it is to say, I'm looking forward to the time when we discuss how these individuals are making better living and all. So that was it. And thank you for your patience.
Agreed.
And
Agreed, Board Member Opperman.
adios.
Do
I'm
you
gone.
have what you need from this part of the
Yes.
conversation? Okay, super. Board Member Figdor, go ahead.
I think Ms. Bondo had her hand up before I did.
Oh, you're okay. Yeah, I was going based on the order on my screen. Board Vice Chair Bondo, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Board Member Victor. Thank you for organizing that. So I've been a strong advocate for making happen because I was a coach a couple of years ago, and I can never say how strong is that that program. But I'm still confused with the extension learning opportunity that I see in the different high school, like Portland High School and Engineering. I just want to see if we have a duplication of some of those services, or make it happen. We just serving the multilingual and marginalized students, and the other extension learning opportunities mostly the mainstream. I just want to have a clarification on that, please. And then the second question is maybe for Ryan to look at, because when I look at on the new structure, the making happen is on the family and communication, and on the FY25 we have only one FTs. And my question is that if we saving that piece, that means we removing the middle school piece of that coordination, or it's going to be a combination of the middle school and the high school as well? And also why that area cannot be moved from the secondary team under the director, secondary access and outcomes, the way I see things. So those are two sides of my question, to understand the extension learning opportunity, why we have two different ones, which population are we serving so far, and if on the FY25 we are eliminate the middle school.
Grace, do you want to take the first question just to talk about sort of the history of ELO and the sort of difficult balance we were trying to find here? And then I can talk a little bit about the staffing piece.
Much like Make It Happen, the Extended Learning Opportunity Program for the district was also grant funded through Nellie Mae, if you remember. That was a Nellie Mae grant funded program through the high school the remodel design. And so there was an extended learning opportunity coordinator that was part of the model for the high school, the two comprehensive high schools. So Casco Bay High School was never part of that design. So that was the history of it. And then when the grant ended, it's one of those things that was also assumed in the local budget and continued the program. So in the beginning of the extended learning opportunity as part of the Nellie Mae redesign, we were not part of that. And so when the grant ended, it became Make It Happen, the mentoring program, and extended learning opportunity came in one umbrella under my supervision to bring it as a district and not necessarily at the school as youth development. And Make It Happen has always been, and we've always done, partnering with community organizations and provide our students with opportunities for where to go for summer camps or summer recreational programming and opportunities after school hours in the different community organizations that we partner with, whether it's Stelling Room, Seeds of Peace, Portland Squash. So there are so many partners that we have had over the years. So when the extended learning opportunity became a local program, that was specifically designed to provide services that it looks like a duplication already of the services that we provide. So what we have done is, reach out to our community, because I was managing both programs, is reach out, and we came together as a team to organize our systems of support and to say, this is now the program that, we can refer our students to no matter what. So, the extended learning opportunities coordinator would be the person in charge of doing all of the experiences for students. So that was what happened. So in this proposal, should there be no ELO coordinator, we will just go back to the world before of us organizing all of these things ourselves without the support of the extended learning opportunities coordinator and doing that. However, Ms. Bondo's question is critical here, Superintendent, because the question is, who do we serve? Make It Happen is designed to serve only multilingual students. And so extended learning opportunities provide services to all students, no matter what their background is in terms of language and culture. So that's the big difference. So in providing support. Now, not that we have turned away anybody, because, you know, as you know, high school students have friends who are not necessarily of the same BIPOC background, but they bring in their friends to all kinds of opportunities that we provide to them. And so, and we do welcome that. So do you want to add anything to that, Rowan, Mr. Henry?
Yeah, I wanted to say that in the future, what I'd like to do is do a better job at tracking the amount of traffic that goes in and out of Make It Happen that from students that are not multilingual, because it happens frequently where, like Grace alluded to, some kids don't know that we are there to serve multilingual students, and so they'll just come in, and we never turn anyone away. And because at the heart of it, you know, we're there for all kids at the heart of it. But it's something that I just wanted to let everyone know, is that we do serve kids who just come in and they have a question, they want it answered, and it's something we gladly do. So we're supporting the whole entire community, indirectly, in a way. Like our doors are open for the whole.
Okay. So yeah, I will stop there before Ryan answer my second part, because I have some sub-question as when I just get those clarification. So this is exactly what I keep saying, that is a lot of evaluation outcomes on some of those programs that we never have on the table. And I just need to make sure, like, having, how can we serve more students than we expect? Because when I see opportunities, like, having some mainstream students coming to the Making Happen and asking questions because they need some support as well. So, I mean, that's clear. Then we are building more systematic racial profiling on dividing also the way we providing services. So my question going to Ryan, now I see on the secondary team, we have the director of secondary access and outcomes. How can we make a more, reachable and adding up on the extension opportunity learning under those secondary team and making more broader on the Making Happen, if possible?
So, I mean, I think one is the answer is that we could, right? That we could add extended learning time as an intentional focus of some of our high school of the future work, right? And think about how that plays out now and have that person work across both schools, right? And work with our director of secondary access and outcomes, right? That's definitely a possibility. That would be an add of a 1.0 FTE based on what's currently budgeted. That's not to say it's not possible. And in fact, when the ELO coordinator at Deering left, the ELO coordinator at Portland was kind enough to offer to provide support across both. It would obviously stretch somebody thin, right? To go across two, then one. We also see that in Make It Happen, right? So in the budget, our current budget has the 6 site coordinators, one for each of our middle schools and one for each of our high schools. Currently, we're really fortunate to have 1.5 supervisors across those 6 schools. We have one focused on high schools and then a half, but it's probably like too oversimplified to think about it as 1.5 at the middle school level. And so in our current budget proposal, just again, recognizing the challenges that we faced, we did move to 1.0, thinking that that one individual could support across both schools. I think one of the things that is great when we thought about equity playing out in this is that Make It Happen starts with serving some of our historically most marginalized students, right? And really serving our multilingual students. I think there's a question about, could we expand that, right? To keep that focus, but to expand it and to track outcomes in a way that would not seem duplicative, but to seem aligned and supportive. I think we could play with both of those, right? Right now, I think we have the challenge of what's our current budget reality and where to make prioritization. But I don't think there's any reason that we couldn't look at adding capacity to Make It Happen, or to the director of post-secondary. I forget what her title is. I've messed up Pamela's title here 5 times now, but to that position.
Yeah, but you still didn't answer to me. Are we removing something from the middle school? Because if we keep only one F piece here on FY25 for the Make It Happen, and we used to have 1.5, I mean, we have some coordination from the middle school and from the high school, right? If I'm correct.
So yeah, what you would see is exactly what you just said, right? Which is the site coordinators are still there at each of the schools. Right now, we're fortunate, and you're joined tonight or this afternoon with them, right? With Rohan and Nyla, right? Rohan is a 1.0 focused on high schools, and Nyla is a 0.5 and then does other work for us to support a whole bunch of other pieces of supporting middle schools. And so the current budget proposal does have us going down to 1.
It's going to be just high school, or are we going to eliminate the effort we have done on middle school?
Nope, it'd be 1, just supporting both middle school and high school.
Okay.
And so the question you'd really be wrestling with is that too much for one individual?
Yes, it's too much for one individual. This is my personal opinion. Because the need
I wonder if Nyla would talk to that.
Oh, okay. Yes, please.
I'm happy to address that. The 0.5 position, I think, is absolutely essential in building those partnerships, in seeking out volunteers, and really having a robust program at the middle school level. Is it doable with a 1.0? I don't know. I don't think so, but if you want to ask me more specific questions, I'm happy to address more specifically, but
Thank you. I just want to go with the perspective that I used to be a coach on middle school, and I just want us to pay a little more attention, because the high school sometimes is too late to catch up on the Make It Happen. Middle school is that transition age, and I know the value going down to the transition, where we make the path for those students. When they reach the high school, they got more support on the high school, and they become more higher achiever than becoming that late. I support those students from the middle school, and I saw the impact for those students moving the needle for the middle school, because that's a transition where you're building a mindset, a critical thinking for those specific students, plus the student who came with nothing like a language support and any other skill to be lifted. So I'm just going to advocate strongly for that position in middle school, because I feel like we're going backward instead of moving forward. And one person, I don't feel like one person can do the work from the high school without defining the middle school the way we're going. So I'm just going to leave right now, and the more we're moving, and I'm going to have more deeper question on that. Thank you.
But I want to comment, maybe a suggestion.
No, I'm sorry, we're gonna go someplace else. Yep, thank you. Board Member Figdor, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair. Yeah, I want to echo Ms. Bondo's comments with respect to ensuring that we're actually setting up the Make It Happen program to fully meet our students' needs. And I also am very concerned about losing that half FTE to help run the middle school program. My other concern, and I'm not clear based on today's conversation and what I've seen in the last week or so, when we talk about Make It Happen expansion, if we're looking to bring in more of our multilingual population, or we're expanding beyond that, because I worry that if we are expanding beyond our multilingual students, that we're going to undermine the impact and effectiveness of the program. And so I want to ensure that our mission is around equity, and that means providing the tools and resources and support to our students who have been most marginalized. And so if we're just expanding the program to all students, and perhaps I'm misunderstanding, but I want to ensure that we keep this program that has been Grace, you can tell us the huge award that you won, national award. Like, this program is awesome, and let's not mess it up. let's ensure that it's meeting more of our multilingual students' needs, but certainly not less. And let's ensure that it has the supervision that it needs in order to be successful. So I don't know, Grace, if you can help me understand when you talk about expansion, who you're talking about.
I'm still talking about multilingual students because I think that again, the design is educational for educational justice, right? This is the core of the program. And so the moves that we make in the program, those opportunities that we provide the kids respond to the needs of multilingual learners. And there are very, very few districts around the country that do that specific specialized work. So when we're talking about expansion, I'm adding more students on our roster. So we only currently are in the 30%, around 35%. So we can increase that. That is, to go to at least close to 50% of our students is what we're looking at. Again, without sacrificing the personalized programming that we provide support. I think that's what it is that we do, is the personalization of every activity that we extend our student. We consider who they are, what their interests are, who they bring, how long they've been in country. All of those things are done in a very personalized way.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm very happy to hear that the intention is to reach more multilingual students. And Grace, can you remind us all of what that award was? Because I know it was a really big deal, and it was pretty recent, the last couple of years.
So it's the National School Board Association award called Magna Award for Equity. So the school board, the National School Board Association, has an equity award that is for schools from 0 to 5,000, and then 5,000 to 10,000, and then the 10,000 and up. So we received the Magna Award for the up to 10,000, 5,000 to 10,000 student body. That's the Prime Award.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And maybe just wanted to say thank you, especially, just a little shout out to Nyla for the email that you sent the board. That was really helpful in outlining your work and why your position is so critical. So thank you so much for sending that. I have some other questions, but they're not specific to Make It Happen. And so I want to see if I can hold my questions for now, if other board members have questions.
Yep. So my perspective is that the floor is open for questions on all topics. I will just sort of do a quick visual scan. Are there other folks that wanted to chime in with a question about Make It Happen? Okay, go for it, Board Member Figdor.
Okay, thank you so much, Chair.
Yep.
So thank you so much, Mr. Superintendent, for the information about the title funding and specifically Title I funding. My question is, and I'm trying to understand the budget, as it looks like as we're aiming to add more reading interventionists, that we have added those reading interventionists at schools without title funding or with less title funding, while in some cases reducing interventionists at the schools that receive the most title funding. So it's a little bit, I appreciate the clarification on what schools are intending to use their title funding for, but I worry that we're like the title funding is there to try to close the opportunity gap or opportunity gaps. But I'm worried that we're coming in with local funding and focusing that local funding on the schools that don't have title funding. So in a way, that means that the schools with the most needs are actually, not gaining staff. Or not gaining staff in the same way that schools without as much title funding or without title funding are getting. And my concern is I would love to have lots of staff at every school, but my concern is that the title schools with the most needs are not keeping up with the needs of in terms of the staff allocation, is not keeping up with the needs of their students. So for instance, I think if you look at East End and Reiki, that they're actually going to lose interventionists, and like if you do a combination of coaching and interventionists, they're going to lose coaches and interventionists this year compared to last year, where and those are the schools where we have the most Title I funding by a lot, although I see that Roe is catching up. And meanwhile, the other schools are gaining intervention staff. So that's my question is, I worry that this staffing allocation is not meeting our students' needs and from a perspective of coaches and interventionists. So if you can help explain that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm looking at overall numbers. So I think part of it is around a shift from education technician as a position providing intervention to teacher providing intervention. The research consistently shows that simply getting pulled out for additional time doesn't have the same impact when it comes to struggling readers as having a reading intervention program that they are running with fidelity. And so part of this, and what was heard pretty consistently in the listen and learn phase, is that we didn't have consistent literacy interventions happening, particularly as one example for students who are identified as having dyslexia. And so that was part of it. The other piece is that, I mean, again, we can go back and look at the numbers again, right? Because there's not an intention of shifting resources from low income to high income schools in any sort of way. But there was thought about how many students are in a school, and therefore what percentage of students are currently reading below grade level based on state standardized tests, and therefore an estimate of what sort of need was present in those buildings. And so it was not just based on income, but also based on need, based on test scores. And so that was part of it. And so that is why you see some of the variability. We can go back and look at it again to see if there are other adjustments needed, and we'll certainly take the feedback.
That would be great. I just want to ensure that the Title I resources are staying with the Title I schools based on need. And, for instance, just like it doesn't, LISAC is going to have is slated in this budget to have 2 interventionists, as is East End and as is Reiki, but the populations at Easton and Reiki are really different than the population at Lyseth. So and I'm not by no means trying to pit the schools against each other. Again, I want resources for all of the schools, but the populations are so different, and those title resources have really been key to closing the opportunity gap. So I want to make sure that the title resources are following the schools the formula that has resulted in those resources coming into the district. I'm just going to raise one other question for now, which is I heard that we are going to talk about the transportation budget tomorrow during our workshop. If I can just put on the table one specific question. I was trying to better understand the budget for the transportation department, and I see that there are 11 bus assistants in the proposed budget, which is same as for this year, with I think more of a change of school year versus calendar year. So noting that there's some change there, but it's still 11 FTE. And I'm wondering how many are for pre-K specifically. I know when we added transportation for pre-K in school year 2022 to 23, we retrofitted buses with harnesses and ran dedicated buses with a monitor for all pre-K students to ensure their safety. And I want to see if that is still the case.
I can go ahead and answer that. No, it's not the case that we have a dedicated bus for each pre-K, because now the pre-K programs are spread across so many different sites. So pre-K, there's some situations where because of the timing and the routes and whatnot, it ends up being that there are dedicated runs that are specific to pre-K, particularly for the pre-K programs, like with YFO, for example. But across the board, it varies depending on school. So in some cases, pre-K kids are sitting on regular buses.
And are those again, we can get into this more tomorrow, but are the bus assistants specifically for the pre-K students? Because I know that was a big indicator when we actually stopped us from being able to add transportation for pre-K for several years until we had enough of a budget to add both the harnesses and the bus monitors. So from a safety standpoint, I'd love to hear more of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can say that the bus assistants are specifically dedicated to special education buses. So we've spent quite a bit of time looking at pre-K. What are the laws related to transportation? What are the sort of best practices as well? And what are other districts doing? So while I would actually love to have an assistant on every single bus, whether pre-K or not, because I think it would just be, some of the drivers would, I think, appreciate just having an extra adult on the bus. But it does become extremely expensive to do that. But in terms of where the pre-K rides on just a regular yellow bus, in general, those don't have an assistant on them, but they do have, whatever the appropriate seating is. It varies by bus. So in some cases, they just sit in their seats. It's not necessarily considered best practice in every case to put them in a harness, in part because of the danger that you can't get them out fast enough in the event that there's an accident or a fire on the bus. The buses are designed so that the compartment that children are sitting in is extremely safe. And the national research shows that sitting in a bus seat is one of the safest ways to ride for a person, just because of the way they've now designed them. I'm not saying that it would be, lovely to get into an accident one way or another, but it is actually relatively safe. So we could certainly have a whole, much longer conversation about pre-K stuff, but, if the board would like to add assistance, we can certainly look at that, but it does add up pretty quickly.
Thanks. That's all very helpful context. My one last question on this is, if we haven't been having bus monitors on buses, it sounds like this year, have there been any problems with that? Have we had kids, have any pre-K kids, not been where they needed to go, as a result of, not having that staffing?
We've had some situations where either a pre-K child didn't get off where they should have or got off in the wrong spot. It's not just pre-K. It's happened occasionally with a student of another grade, but obviously with pre-K and kindergarten, we're specifically looking to, make sure we control very carefully where they get off, and they have to connect with an adult, their guardian. So we've had a few incidents of this year where something didn't go as planned, and we were able to address those pretty quickly. I don't know that I would necessarily associate that specifically with the lack of an assistant. Would having another adult on the bus help, to prevent something like that? Maybe. There's some other measures we're looking to put in place to try to address those issues as well.
Okay. Board Member Figdor, do you have what you need from this part of the conversation? Great. Thank you. Okay. Vice Chair Bondo, go ahead.
Thank you so much. It's going to be quick. I just want to echo what Member Victor just mentioned about the Title 1, about Reiki and East End. Then I just want to make sure that we can revisit and make sure that we have some of those opportunity for the Title 1 to be used on the interventionist and reading. But my sub-question is that, because I saw some of the F1 or 24, are we fully staffing on those positions, the reading math interventionists right now across the schools, or we still have some challenge to fill those positions? Because I know for the new structure, you are proposing some EdTech trees, to be cut those positions and to add some more reading interventionists. So, but currently right now, are we fully staffed on what we need, or we still challenging to staff those area of reading interventionist staff on the FY24?
So in FY24, when it comes to education technicians, we are not fully staffed. Where we find that we're particularly not fully staffed is actually in our special education classrooms. Mm-hmm. And so we have a challenge where we do not have enough education technicians, right? Part of that may be a question around pay and thinking about that, but we don't have enough education technicians to fill our classes for our students that require them based on their IEP. And so our general ed techs, right? The folks who do reading intervention, serve as a media specialist in a library, support in the hallway, or do all of the other key things, right? That is the sort of clay that holds it all together. Those are generally filled. But one of the things that we recognize is we need to be able to fill our special education ed tech positions. The specialists, in terms of the intervention of hiring teachers, I do believe there would be enough interest, but that's a new position for the reading intervention. Our coaching / intervention positions, right? One of the things that I shared with you guys is that our current math coaches are about 40% interventionist, 60% teacher coaching, right? Based on their reported numbers. Those are almost fully filled. I think we have one vacancy in it right now. And our reading coach, I'd have to check on exactly what that number is.
So what you're talking about is across all the schools, elementary to, so that's all we have some on the middle school as well, right? And high school. So it's all over the
so at the middle school level, there are 3, I think they're called instructional specialists, same type of idea. Mm-hmm. I believe those are all filled. At the high school, there is not the coach position for exactly the same trade-off that Dr. Opperman was highlighting before. Mm-hmm. In terms of there already being assistant principals to provide that coaching on the instructional end.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, we
Thank you
have,
for now. Thank you,
Oh.
Chair. I'm
Yes.
done.
Awesome. We have 3 minutes left. Board Member Figdor, do you have a question that can fit in 2 minutes versus tomorrow's workshop?
Yes, I have process questions. Thank you. So my process questions are one, thank you, Mr. Superintendent, for providing the board responses to many of our questions from the last Finance Committee meeting. I'm wondering if those can be posted in board docs so the full community can see them, in addition, including the walkthrough data for our implementation of our math curriculum. And then my second question is, just want to clarify, and it seems like, Chair, that you just said yes, but I have a bunch of additional questions. I just want to clarify that during tomorrow's workshop, we'll have plenty of time for additional questions.
That's my understanding. Yep, that's my understanding. And also so on the 28th, when we have our meeting after the joint meeting, that we won't be bound to the same time constraints. And on Monday, April 1st, we won't have the same time constraints as well.
Okay, super.
Yep. I mean, we should obviously be efficient with our conversations, but, not a drop dead. Yeah. I just want to articulate my gratitude and appreciation for all of the staff, hours and hours and hours of work that you all have put in to making sure that we have the information we need to make decisions about, how to deal with this very challenging budget year. So thank you so much. Thank you to all the staff folks who joined today and shared, valuable information about Make It Happen and all the other topics we've discussed today. I really appreciate all of you. It is 3:29. We did it. So I'm going to look for a motion to adjourn this committee meeting.
So
Board Member, thank you. In a second. Board Member Figdor, thank you so much. And show of hands from committee members. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. We are adjourned at 3:29 p.m. on March 18th. Have a good rest of your day, everybody. Bye.